David French. What do you know about him?
Oh God, the name rings a bell. Doesn't he write for the Atlantic and some other things sometimes? I know I've read stuff, but
he's a fellow at the National Review Institute. He's staff writer at the National Review. I guess he's written for Time and some other places. Okay. Is he one of these people that on the right that they call never Trumpers? Do you know?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, but I would, yeah.
So I don't know much about him.
Most mainstream writers that are Republican are never Trumpers.
Okay, yeah, I think that's what he is. I'm not sure, but I'm still learning about a lot of the writers and people on the right. So I'm asking because I read this article of his that I saw getting shared around. I just sent it to you, and it's about evangelicals, but even more specifically, it's about white evangelicals.
Okay,
and I've seen a lot of the woke Christians. The ones who, in my opinion, are blasphemous because they've replaced Christianity with wokeness, or they're trying to corrupt Christianity with wokeness, which doesn't vibe with the Bible. It doesn't vibe with the gospel. I've seen a lot of them celebrating this article, and it's called "Why Do They Hate Us?"
By the way, people are saying he is a never Trumper.
Okay, so that's funny because that's the gut instinct I got just from reading this piece.
Okay.
Because I'm like trying to figure him out. Anyway, it's called "Why Do They Hate Us?" And notice that he puts himself in the subject there, us. He's lumping himself in with white evangelicals, which is interesting. He says race, Christian nationalism, and white evangelical alienation from America. And this is a very interesting piece to me because on the one hand, do you want to pull it up? I want to read just a little bit.
Do you have a link? You want to send me a link? I can pull it up.
I sent it to you.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry. I missed it. The French press one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's pull it up here.
So he says, in short, this is the second paragraph, contrary to popular conservative Christian belief, evangelicals are not just facing resistance for their righteousness. They are also reaping what they've sown with their own commitment to partisan politics and to sometimes unjust and even malicious policies that have no grounding in biblical ethics. So this is his thesis.
Does he cite them?
Well, he goes on at the end to repeat this thesis. This is his belief, right? So here's what he cites. Well, first of all, he says there's no question that many millions of theologically conservative Christians...
Wait. I'm sorry. Before we get into it, can I just point something out here that he's doing? Because I think this is how Marxism has creeped in. He is treating... my guess is he's treating any principled approach as a problem, and he thinks that compromise is the right answer always because he's probably a pragmatist. And so what they do is they say it's unreasonable to not compromise on principles. And what that means is they get you to compromise, and the other major set of principles at play here are Marxist principles. And so you are in a cycle of continually compromising, splitting the difference between radical authoritarian Marxism principles and whatever counter principles you have. And so you're always moving towards the left. It's just why, but this is how they get away with it, by eradicating principles as a valid reason to oppose something and claiming that you're just being a radical or you're being extremist and you ought to just be practical and compromise. So sorry, let's keep going.
He even goes on, I would argue, you'll see, he even goes on to define Christian belief as somehow radical, even though he's putting himself in that same category. It's weird.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, that's my take on it anyway.
Yeah.
So he says, so first of all, he says, a lot of Christians, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but a lot of Christians will say, just as Jesus and the apostles promised, the world hates us because of our faith. We reject the world's libertine sexual ethics and commitment to abortion, and thus the world rejects us. So then he says, well, there is some truth in this statement. I've seen it with my own eyes, et cetera, et cetera. But then he says, scroll down a little bit. There's also a less comforting and also quite true answer to the question, why do they hate us?
Oh, wait,
there is a Okay.
Oh, here, way down here. Okay, got it.
Yeah. There is a growing cultural divide between white evangelical America and much of the rest of the nation that has nothing to do with Christian faithfulness. Now, first of all, I agree with him. There's a growing cultural divide.
Sure.
Between, and I would not say white evangelical America. I would just say evangelical America. I think he's trying to pin this on, he's trying to tie up evangelical with white. Mm-hmm. But I would say the divide is growing between Christians and I would say the secular woke world. Mm-hmm. It's also growing between unwoke atheists and atheists. You know, it's like, I think this cultural divide is over wokeness. And I think he, for some reason, has a blind spot and can't see what the divide is really about. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, he would throw me in with evangelical white America.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I'm an atheist. Absolutely.
Even though you're an atheist, you would be in the bad side, Carter. Mm-hmm. So he says there's a growing cultural divide and and it has nothing to do with Christian faithfulness. Now, he goes on to, in this piece, it's almost as if he's saying, white evangelical America, or let's just say evangelical America, they're on the unpopular side of this cultural divide. And then it's almost as if he's taking that itself as evidence that they are therefore wrong and bigoted. He doesn't offer
to a pragmatist. That's true.
Oh, okay.
Because there are no values. He's just pragmatic. So whatever's popular is moral. He's getting, what did Rand call it? A social metaphysician. He looks around, instead of deciding what morals and ethics are true based on his own judgment or a belief system or whatever, he looks around at what his neighbors do, and that's true. That's what truth is. That's
what truth is. Yeah, it was really bothering me. I was like, wait a minute, why are you seem to be taking the secular side in this cultural war only because it's popular.
Yeah.
You never actually make the argument that it's more moral. You just take that at faith, as if we should all take that at faith too.
Yeah. And can I say I'm interjecting a lot here, but the other thing I want to say about this is these people like him, they're the ones actually who are the ambassadors of Marxism. They're the ones who are actually bringing bad ideas into society, because if it weren't for these pragmatists, you would have bad ideas and you would have them contrasted very clearly with people with principles on the other side, and people could have principled arguments and discussions, and you would see the bad ideas for what they are. But people like him obscure the fact that this is a principled conversation to be having, that we're talking about morals, that we're talking about real principles that matter, and they convert everything into this kind of detail-oriented pragmatic approach with a myopic view of everything. And so we don't have the conversation we should, precisely because people like him are preventing us from having that conversation. They're couching this as just some sort of pragmatic disagreement, and one side is being impractical.
Yeah. That's exactly how he does it. It's almost like you don't even need to read this article, Carter.
This is why I don't read these articles.
Because you know what he's going to say. Mm-hmm. I'll just read a little bit more. But he says, no, I'm not talking primarily about Donald Trump. Yeah, you are.
The fact that you had to say that means we know who you're talking about. But thank you.
No, I'm not talking primarily
I'm also talking about Trump supporters.
Yeah, he goes, support for the president is a symptom, not the disease. Well, I actually think support for Trump is a symptom of a disease too, but the disease is wokeness. I think a lot of people voted for him because wokeness, we are terminal.
It's the body's natural response to the woke virus.
Yeah, it's the body's natural response to the woke virus. Okay, he goes, instead, I'm talking about race and immigration, history, and the vast and growing gulf between white evangelicals and the rest of the United States on issues that dominate so many American hearts. Hearts, guys. Last month, the University of Virginia's Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture published a report called Democracy in Dark Times that was designed to take a deeper look at the different beliefs and motivations of red and blue America. Its findings regarding white evangelicals were startling. Evangelicals, it said, were emerging as the cultural other. Now, I agree.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think, and not, again, he's trying to say white, but I'm just saying Christians are emerging as the other, perhaps. It says the cultural other is an individual or more than likely an entire group whose beliefs and practices place them outside of normal or acceptable society. Their way of thinking and of life
we're being othered.
Yeah, their way of thinking of life offends the sensibilities and ideals of the dominant group, in this case being the woke group, right? This is what they're saying. And in this sense, they are stigmatized in the extreme. As such, the cultural other is regarded as not just outside of the in-group, but so far outside that their very presence represents a profound ethical violation that might even be experienced as repugnant to those who are not part of it. This would now seem to be how many people outside of evangelicalism, I can't say that word. Evangelicalism have come to think about the modern day evangelical movement and those who comprise it. So this, for me, I agree with all of this. I think
except can I just point something out here also? They're using this is subtle language crap.
Yeah.
Evangelical is not the right word. He just means Christians.
Yes, he just means Christians.
He doesn't mean evangelicals. Evangelicals are the people that like stand on the street corner and try and convince you and go like, he just means anyone who is trying to be Christian, actually Christian and not woke first. That's what he means. But he's going to use the word evangelicals because even a lot of mainstream Christians always feel a little bit weird about evangelicals because they're socially awkward, because people don't like having conversations with evangelicals, because evangelicals are often, historically were the ones that were like, you should accept Jesus. I'm going to bother you until you're going to have to listen to me. I'm going to they're always trying to preach to people that they're evangelizing constantly. I'm not saying all evangelicals are like that. I'm just saying that's the connotation with the word evangelical. It's just why he's using that word. But we're not talking about just people who are evangelical. We're also talking about anyone, even if they don't have evangelical behavior, who believes the tenets, right? And that's most actual Christians, frankly.
I think one thing that might be happening also is that they tend to like to create. What's the right way to put this? It's easier to attack things if you pick a small group of people and make them, in the minds of others, make them untouchables, deplorables. And so, like, for example, with wokeness, they've done this with white men, straight white men, so much so that, there are articles written about how, black men are the straight white men of black people. It's like you can make it as
and
bad,
they typically
untouchable.
They typically choose the label that's most disturbing at first. So if you'll notice, what they did right away was use the word Nazi. Like they haven't used it as much now, but what they did early was they used the word Nazi because everyone agrees, A, Nazi's a tiny subset. B, everyone agrees Nazi's a bad word. And in fact, legitimately, Nazi's a bad word, right? But it also has very bad connotations, which are deserved. So they can use that word, but then all the arguments made with that are like, well, neo-Nazi, well, people who are, well, white supremacy, well, white people generally, well, men, but like they just kind of expand it to anyone supporting what was originally labeled this very bad word, but actually is not. They don't mean just that group of people.
That's kind of what I was trying to say, I think, is that if they make evangelical a bad word, and I will tell you, I think they have been successful at doing that culturally, just because as someone who was in the social justice cult, I still don't know what evangelicals are, but I know that I don't have all the opinions about them that I used to. And I actually went to an evangelical church here for a while, which is funny because I would be like, what are we? Like, what are you? All I had heard were that, I had this boogeyman in my mind of these horribly racist, sexist bigots, evangelicals, all the bad words that brings up. So if they can successfully culturally isolate a small group, one type of Christian, I guess, then it's easier to, like you said, expand that out to Christians as a whole. But first they have to make that, they're using that boogeyman word,
Yeah, and I want to be clear, because someone in chat was saying it's evangelists. I'm not claiming to define correctly what an evangelical is. What I'm saying is how evangelical, that as a word, is responded to emotionally in mainstream society, not what the actual definition is. And it is a little bit of a boogeyman word. People do respond to it in like a kind of way. That's all I'm saying.